Welcome to The Vibe. Back in 2022, I used to do a show, part of Contemporary Problems, where I called it Through the Portals, where I would talk about whatever kind of cosmic portal we were going through. And it was received well. I just went through the portal I had to, I guess. And this is essentially a new version of that, where I call it The Vibe, where we talk about the vibe. What's the vibe? And it's like this thing where before I would kind of talk a little bit about astrological transits as well as like the numerical portals, because everyone called everything a portal, which I also wasn't a fan of. It's just the calendar. It's the Roman calendar. So what if it's 111? Like, you know, and the mission with that was to like apply some like pragmatism and grounding to all the starseed woo-woo that was out there. Because a lot of that stuff kind of sells you like false hope. And they all tell you what you want to hear and not what you need to hear. It ain't all puppies and rainbows. Sometimes it's bunnies and dolphins. So, welcome to The Vibe. So alongside Contemporary Problems, I've always kind of been doing like a sort of like you could box it into like an astrology, numerology, spiritual kind of show or episodes in between, whether as Contemporary Problems or as something else, where I would talk about the vibe. And I'm a big fan of like I listen to tons of astrology and know a lot about it myself, but although I am a fan of like, and say like an astrologer really breaking it down to the aspects, down to the degrees, what we're going through and all that. At the same time, I'm a fan of like when you can take all that work and talk about it like you're not talking about astrology, like you're not constantly having to reference astrology right down to the aspect and all that, because I feel like that's such a certain type of niche where like if you just talk about the vibe, it's more applicable to people, to like the common folk, because everyone wants to know the vibe. And a lot of friends come to me asking me that, hey Teach, what's the vibe? And if I'm to break down, oh, this planet is squaring this planet, blah, 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 they don't care about that. They just want to know the vibe. So that's kind of the goal with this, is to just bring the vibe so that people don't have to like roll their eyes when you get deep into the astrology, but then every once in a while I can add tidbits there. And it's not just about the astrology. Because even then I see a lot of astrologers kind of burn out trying to do those shows too, because there's so much work, there's so much mathematics, there's so much to look at. And I even feel that way when I check the charts for myself or that kind of thing, where I'll be like, I'll read a whole chart of the present day or into the future or of someone, and I'll be like, oh, I understand. But to like explain it, to like really break it down, then you kind of like plateau and it becomes this very like complex thing with like too much context to it. So I want to like find that balance, find that groove of how I can just talk about it in a sense of like, okay, what's the vibe? And for me, I've been into astrology since I was 9 years old, and like looked at it deep and deeper. It wasn't just about the personalities. It wasn't just about like the birth charts and all that. Although that's a huge component of astrology, I like to focus more on like what's the vibe? Where as like a manager, team leader, person that made the schedule and stuff and a lot of the work that I've done IRL, it's things like like I'd give my little speech at the start of the shift or that kind of thing, and I'd be like, well guys, we got a full moon. Gonna get a little wild today. That's why we got an extra staff member on tonight. Those kind of things. And astrology, at the end of the day, is a tool. And there's different ways that we can use those tools. And I like to apply it to my life. I like to apply it to my projects. I like to apply it to just figuring out the vibe. Knowing what to like bring to the world and when. And at the end of the day, I think like part of like the astrological journey is like in the end to not need the astrology, is to not need to just go with the flow and go with what you feel and what feels right. But at the same time, you can use that like calculation, because the astrology might say act on it. The astrology might say wait a bit. And it's going to be different for each person. So I think that, again, it kind of boxes you in if like you're trying to dissect the astrology too deeply. And yeah, sure, people want that. But people also just want to know the vibe. And that's what I'm hoping to do by starting the show. And yeah, and it's not just about the astrology. There's this empathic, intuitive side that I have to myself, as well as like I'm well versed in numerology and tarot and all these things. But like, and again, I have lots of astrologer friends and I'm like, oh, what do you think about numerology? They're like, yeah, it doesn't really do it for me, like that kind of thing. So at the same time, I don't need to really dive into that. Or I can do whatever I want. It's my show. But as much as I'm doing this for me, I'm also doing this for y'all. So again, I'm trying to figure out how to look at certain transits, look at certain kind of signs, look at the energetics that are out there, and be able to be a median to communicate it to you who doesn't care about how we got there. Doesn't matter how I got there. You just want the be all end all, as well as pondering it a bit. And I think because of that, with just my spiritual experiences, my spiritual abilities, my philosophical perspective of these spiritual arts and that kind of thing, I can hopefully deliver something that y'all can vibe with. Y'all can vibe on the vibe. You know, it's another story for another day, but like just the current vibe of like the astrology that's out there, mostly on social media and that kind of thing. There's all the influences of social media affecting how it gets expressed as well as how it gets perceived. And I think either details get lost, there either is too much like trying to manipulate the algorithm and trying to find those balances within social media that have affected what good spiritual information could be out there and being expressed. That's not everybody. That's not every astrologer. There's tons that do great work that I'm huge fans of. But again, say like you read a horoscope in a newspaper or something. There's something that I really like about that style where they just kind of like give it to you without having to break down certain aspects. Or because the moon is in this is happening to you. I get that as like a language of astrology, but at the end of the day, I just think like when you're diving into one aspect of that, there's too much context. So I think this is the perfect fit to kind of just express that and vibe on it and not have to have the chart in front of me and just try and dissect with all this notes and all this like unnecessary effort, because it's like I've spent my whole life being interested in this kind of thing where I've already done a lot of that work. And it's just about it like having a more natural flow, which leads to the topic of today's show. We're going to be talking about or focusing mainly on the North Node and the nodal switch that just occurred. Long story short, the moon has a north and south node, and they have to do with the ecliptic. It has to do with the sun's path and the moon's path and where they intersect. So this changes about every year and a half. So we just changed into a new nodal axis. So everything that I want to talk about today and everything has to do with the next year and a half. And I think that the nodes are so important because they represent, the North Node represents the direction you're heading, and the South Node represents what you have to let go of. In a way, it's almost like what's going to work versus what is no longer working. What is going to serve you and what is no longer serving you. And you can even look at your own chart. And if you need to find, if you're a little lost in direction of like where you need to take your own life and what lessons you need to learn about like what you need to let go of or whatever, you can look to the nodes in your chart, what sign they're in and what house they're in. Luckily for me, this North Node in Pisces is a nodal return, meaning that I have North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo. So I'm well versed in this energy. And the last time that we were in this energy was 2006 to 2007. So you could think back to what did life look like then for you. And for me, it was totally awesome. And that would have been my first nodal return. So this is my second nodal return in my life. I'm pretty stoked about it. Because the world aligned with my approach to life. And I think because of that too, I'd like to share some of that with you to help y'all for the next year and a half. So if we look back on the last year and a half, leading up until now with this change, the nodes were North Node Aries, South Node Libra. And Aries, you could think of it as the Alpha and the Omega as well. Aries, the Alpha, Libra, the Omega. The Libra sign has an Omega within it. It's the Alpha Omega. And with its South Node in Libra, Libra has a lot to do with the arts. So for the artists, it's been a little tough the past year and a half, per se. And you could even see that whereas the vicious rise of AI and say image generating, music generating, all these things, it kind of took a hit on a lot of the artists out there. I'm sure designers are losing their shoot. I don't want to swear. I'm trying to do this without swearing. But they got their panties in a knot a little bit. Their petunia's been getting pulled a bit. Their chain's been yanked because they're probably losing a lot of business to AI. And I think that even fits with the past year and a half with the North Node in Aries as well, because Aries is a very immediate energy. So it's why go back and forth with the design guy or whatever? I can just type it in and have it instantly. So you get that instant reward kind of thing. And that's very much like the Aries energy. And it's like that alpha energy. So I think too, whether it's social media people, content creators, artists of all sort, the people that have been having the most success over the past year and a half are the alpha energy, the loudest person in the room, that kind of thing. And everyone led to everyone trying to speak over each other, and everyone kind of fighting for the attention a bit, fighting for that opportunity. And it did work out for a lot of people. Or we might have been tested where we should have fought through that more. Where, okay, things aren't working out. People aren't vibing on your thing. Maybe there's a lot of us that could have fought harder for that. Could have fought harder for people's attention. Could have been more alpha about it. And Aries is also the ego. So it's kind of the ego's a balloon. So the biggest balloons kind of had the success. And with that too, it's if you're trying to appeal to people in whatever thing you're doing, the customer side of it was also well, how does this help me? Where you might have been doing the right thing and staying true to yourself, because again, the ego, but the customer was also well, how does this benefit me? So it was a clash from both ends of it. Just a lot of ego kind of clashing, where you were either faced with a challenge and you couldn't figure it out, or you were just wondering, why isn't this clicking? Why isn't this working out? Why aren't the people vibing on this kind of thing? And couldn't find that balance. But with the South Node in Libra is the scales, is the balance. It wasn't about finding that balance. It was about ramming through. Aries is the ram. It was about ramming through to get it. Or you could have been in like a bit of a trial and error kind of thing, trying new things, trying to see what works, trying to get a read on what does work. And I don't do well in that energy. I'm like the next energy over from that. And looking back in my life to when there was the same nodes as the last year and a half, it was the same kind of thing where people's egos were getting in the way of my own success and my own life. And the ego is like this space filled up. So if that space is too defined in everyone else's ego, there's no room for your ego. It can be a really hard thing to try and fight for the space. There's only so much space in that room. There's only so much air in that room to fill up with however many balloons there are. And I've talked about the ego a lot. I bring it up where it's like you have to have a good balance of it. And this is something like everyone's aware of the ego and stuff, but I feel like it's something that I've paid a lot more attention to than the average person. It kind of has to do with like, yeah, I've done a fair share of psychedelics and that kind of thing, especially like in public, but just being a musician and in a lot of creative kind of projects, you see that. And having like the band having a producer, which is usually someone wiser than the band, having mentors in projects and that kind of thing, it just helped me get a real good sense of that and what is required from everybody to fit their own ego and to have that balance within the balloon. And I think that's like also perfect why Libra is the opposite of Aries, where there's this balance, but Aries is like this ego where it's the ram, it's the alpha, and that energy is what shines through when that's what the universe is supporting. But now this is about to shift. And I think a lot of people do very well in that ego and have done very well in the last year and a half. But now with it switching to now the focus on Pisces energy, that's not going to work anymore. The Pisces kind of thinks that's lame. The Pisces energy is like, yo, get out of here. Your vibe's too loud. Your vibe's too rough, too aggressive. Pisces is all about the sparkle. And I think that it might take some time, but I think that we're going to see a big shift with the vibe of social media and what does well on social media. And it's more about like what people are receptive to more than just like what the algorithm feeds us and gives to us. Where a lot of these things that were working for everybody in the past isn't going to work anymore. Pisces has a lot to do with like, it's kind of like a theatric and like has to do with like the illusion. And I think with the North Node in Pisces, it's going to help us like see through that illusion. So I think a lot of these kind of alphas or people that have been embracing that alpha energy, the people that have been, it's working out because they're being the loudest one. They're posting the most. They're most aggressive on the content. They weren't necessarily worried about the artistic side of it, the sparkle and shine of it all, and just getting it out there, put yourself out there kind of thing. It's going to have to move on past that. And with it, Pisces being a water sign, it has a lot to do with going with the flow. Pisces is the lost fish. Little fishies in the pond. And fishes get spooked pretty easily. So if you come in with that like loud energy, the fish aren't going to respond to that. You cannonball into the pool or into the lake or whatever, the fish are going to scatter. Like, you ever gone fishing? You got to shut the heck up. You got to keep quiet. You're going to scare the fish. And that's what's kind of going to happen, I think, with a lot of the content creators, is the ones that like where it's been working out, where they're loud, they're bold, they're like in your face, they're everywhere, they're going hard, they're ramming through it, is going to be like, hey dude, chill out. Here's one thing that I've been basically why I want to talk about this topic, and what sparked doing this whole show was to bring up this point about Pisces energy that I've never really heard anyone say this directly, although it's implied. But Pisces is our natural talents. Every Pisces has a natural talent where it's not anything they had to really train for or anything. They just picked it up and could do it. It's just something in their DNA, and more importantly, like in their soul and their spirit, because Pisces is the spirit, but something in their spirit that it was in them all along. It's these God-given and ancestral talents that are just in us. And a lot of the like natural talents, you'll see this in a lot of like Pisces athletes or musicians, where it's like, oh, they're just picked up and could play. Steph Curry, I think, is a perfect example. Just was born and was like, yep, I have this natural ability to play basketball. And yeah, sure, we're always practicing and honing our crafts and all that. But this next year and a half is really going to reward what your natural talents are. We all have them. So like, if you're trying to look into the future, plan ahead, trying to see what the next year and a half is about for you, maybe even make a list of what are your natural abilities. Oh, you want to do this? You want to get from point A to B? Oh, you want to focus on this? You want to start this project? Well, what are my natural abilities that help that? Oh, I'm a good speaker. Oh, I'm a researching something comes naturally to me. Whatever it is, figuring out what that is, and even making a list of what that is that you can already bring to the table that's just within you. And if you don't know what those are, it's a good time to figure out what those are in conjunction with everything that you're doing. Because that's what's going to really like work with this Piscean energy. And that's really what's going to work. That's really what's going to be received by the Pisces energy, is that natural sparkle, that natural glow. And that's something you can't force. It's something that you just kind of have and just do, and you do without thinking. A lot of Pisces energy is the subconscious. So it could have even been a skill that you've been developing all your life or however long in the past, where you've practiced something so much that it just becomes natural. You don't have to think twice about doing it. You just do it. That's very Piscean energy. And it fits with like, because the North Node and South Node, it's always going to be the opposite signs. So Virgo, being the opposite sign of Pisces, is the South Node. Virgo is the practice. Virgo is the receipts. Virgo is the work you put in, the meticulousness, all those things. But that's not going to matter as much as your natural ability. And when you tap into those natural talents that you have, that's going to make the people that are too focused on the other side, the opposite of that, essentially. Well, I put in the work, I put in the practice, are going to get real jealous. That's usually what happens when you have some sort of natural ability. And, you know, we all have that. We all have stuff that we're good at. And then we all have stuff that, like, we won't get better at unless we put in the practice and the work. But I think as far as, like, 2020 being a huge shift and a lot of people switching it up, and even, like, a bit before that, leading into the 2020s and stuff, it led us to figure that out. We've been putting in the practice. We've already put in the practice. We've already put in the work. We've already learned the new skills. And now it's just about making those second nature. And with the South Node, Virgo being what we need to let go, I think that if we find ourselves practicing too much, that maybe that's not helping us move forward. It's what we've already practiced on and put practice into, mixed with our natural ability, that will help us push forward. Virgo's also reality. Pisces is the dream world. So this is a time that benefits the dreamers, the ones that believe in magic, where when you have that belief and you're tapped into that sparkle and that cosmic magic and the beyond the reality, you know, you'll get asked the question, how did you do that? How did you pull that off? And you won't even be able to explain. You'll just be like, I don't know. It's just what I do. It's the magic. That's at least what it is for me in my own life as a North Node in Pisces person. That's like a question that I get all the time. How'd you come up with that? Even in sports, they'd be like, how'd you pull that off? How'd you pull that move off? And I'm like, I don't know. It's the magic of it. And there is always that like magical aspect to everything. So that's just very emphasized for the next year and a half. And I think the people that are too pragmatic and too much of a realist are going to have a bit of a harder time. And they might end up as the negative Nancys when it's all said and done, because they went out of their way to not believe in the magic, where they were too focused on being grounded in reality, where the South Node in Virgo, we have to let go of what that reality is, what that reality is going to look like, what that pragmatism and grounding in that reality might hold us back for the miracles that could be happening in our lives. And Virgo's very critical very critical energy. So it's the criticizer. It can nitpick anything. And if you're too much like trying to ground in reality, as well as nitpick others that things are just working out or they're just working their magic, that's going to leave a lot of people bitter, where we're supposed to be letting go of that criticism. And a lot of that criticism might not even have to do with others. It might have to do with ourselves. Where, like, obviously there's a balance to the living the dream and the dream world and reality, the magic and the reality. But if you think about it, like, there's like an innocence that a child has, that it can believe anything's possible. It can believe that it could do anything, that it could be anything. And it's like a responsibility of the adult to find that balance, but to preserve that innocence and not ground that child too much in reality. Because when we're born, we come from the dream world. We come from the spiritual place, and children are very spiritual. And you have to like preserve that innocence. Where if you're too nitpicky on something, that might stop a dream from happening. So because of that too, I think that there might be a lot of unnecessary criticism and jealousy for those that are living beyond the reality and just believing in the magic and letting the magic of the universe do its thing. But again, yeah, that could also be our own inner critic, where all it takes is like someone to be like, why are you doing that? What are you doing? To stop something from growing. So we really don't want to catch ourselves in that criticism, and we want to let ourselves expand as far as our dreams can reach, as far as our dreams can be. And I think with that too, there's also a playfulness that comes with it, where if you treat it like kind of with that innocence, that it is this fun thing, that vibration is going to be heard as well. And it's in that'll give you that natural sparkle and glow, and give you the belief that anything is possible. It'll give you this spiritual confidence and this like trusting of yourself and your natural abilities, that you won't be as worried about pushing and fighting through, because you know that the magic will happen because you believe in it. That'll allow you to go with the flow rather than trying to ram through and fight for everything and fight through everything. And it'll also allow you to kind of read the room, read the vibe. If the vibe doesn't feel right, don't do it. Wait a day. Wait a month. Wait till it feels right to do it. And looking back on it, I wanted to do this type of show a couple days ago, but I don't know. The light came on and felt like now was the time. It's like 1 a.m. and it's 2 days after when I thought I would do it. But when I wanted to do it, didn't feel right. Where for the past year and a half, that didn't matter. Just do it. Who cares? Just do it was the vibe. But now it's like really kind of feel it out. And I think that even in that too, there's like a bit of the unknown in that Pisces energy, where I said that one post where I'm like, most people can't handle being in the unknown. And the fear of the unknown is a big one for some. And this Pisces energy is going to be a lot of that lost fish in the unknown. But it's in that too, if you're in that unknown, to look for the sparkles, to look for the signs, to look for what feels cool and feels right. To keep that flow. And if it doesn't feel right, then you're going to swim elsewhere. You're going to swim somewhere that does feel right and comfortable to be hanging. Like, I'm big on that too. When the vibe's off, I leave. I'll just leave. I'm out. Tej, where are you going? Vibe changed. I'm out. That was a very common thing that would happen in my life where, yeah, they'd be like, Tej, why are you leaving? We're all here hanging out. I'd be like, well, the vibe of this room changed, and I don't like it. So I'm out. I'm going to go somewhere else where I feel more comfortable, where I can still have my sparkle. Go with the flow, find the glow. There's also like a romantic side to Pisces where, and I don't even mean that like as a one-on-one relationship. It could mean that as well. But it's like the beauty of life, the romance in life, that like a Pisces or Pisces energy just kind of carries. And that fits with like the illusion. It loves the illusion. It loves the like the glamour and well, maybe not glamour, but like like the glitter and the sparkles and the beauty in life. The stopping and smelling the roses, the like appreciation of like a nice soft snowfall, or just like when you see that kind of like movie moment, like, wow, it feels like we're in a movie and it's all beautiful. That's very Piscean energy. So obviously we can't tap into that 24/7, but we can still look for that and look for those moments where like, whoa, this does feel like a movie right now. And it's very like, it's also a very in the moment energy in its own way. It's like it's in the moment, but it doesn't need it now. It's like the moment's already here. Where like for the past year and a half, it was like a different kind of now where it's like, I want it now. I want this now. Let's go do this now. Where the energy for the next year and a half is like, we're in the now, man. We're in the now. We're already there. And I think with that and everything I said about this Pisces energy too, you can again look back to the 2006, 2007, like 2006 to 2008 kind of vibe in your life. What was it like? What were the things you did that brought that sparkle? What were those things that you did that just seemed to come naturally to you? And you can like look back at then and see like, okay, I made these decisions that benefited me during that time. For me, that was like when I started the band. And it was like by our third show, we had so much hype and buzz where we were basically a headliner by our third show. We were the band everyone wanted to see, everyone wanted to book, everyone wanted to add to their show. And it's like, what did we do that separated us from everyone else trying to play shows? What did we do differently? And look back on it, it's like nothing. We just we just brought our authentic self and showcase our natural abilities and brought our natural glow. And again, it brought tons of critics. It like, for all the success we had early on and friends and fans and all that and bands and all that, there was a lot of bands that didn't like us because like, well, I've been working on this forever and this band comes out of nowhere and does this. Like that really fits with it. And I always think back to like the best decision we ever did as a band was we were like getting emails and phone calls and everything, trying to get booked, hey, all this. And I convinced the guys, let's not do any of it. Everyone wants us on shows. We're in high demand right now. Most people would say act on it. You gotta go. When the lightning strikes, like sure, there's something to that. But I was like, let's not book anything for a couple months. Let's like create even more hype. Let's turn down all these shows. And they'll lead to better shows. And you think like the fish and the hook, it's like, let's not bite on this hook. Might have got reeled in. And I think that waiting those like 2 months made it even better, where it was like, okay, something doesn't feel right. We got to wait this out a bit. And it grew even bigger. And it like was one of the best decisions we ever made in our band, was having all that hype and having the power to say no and being like, well, let's wait a bit. And it also gave us time to get better. So that like, because you see that a lot too, and especially nowadays with social media, you blow up, everyone wants to see you, and you're not, and so many people, so many acts, and this isn't just music, but this could be comedy, this could be anything. You get all this hype, and you're not fine-tuned enough to be ready for it, to have that many eyes on you. Where these bands or these acts or whatever will get their show or a project, and you'll get your clients or whatever because you've got all this buzz and this hype, and you have relied on natural ability, but you haven't really fully honed into it, but it's there. But you see that so much where that energy, or you get a lot of eyes on you, and you're not ready for it. And that might mess up your opportunities to go forward from that even further. But again, that comes down to like truly feeling it out. And again, there's always going to be that balance where you do have to, sure, it's the South Node and it's what we're letting go in that Virgo, but there is still some sort of balancing in that, like the practicality, having the receipts, having put in the work, that just because it's what we're letting go doesn't mean it's what also needs to be assessed. Where maybe we need to put in a bit more work before we can let it go. Where we need to fine tune those things and be critical and have a little bit of that inner criticism or inner criticism of others. We don't need to share our criticism, but kind of find that balance of what we've maybe already accomplished and what needs a little bit more work. But again, with that North Node of Pisces, you have to have the mindset, the North, the head, you have to have that mindset that it's about the magic. So if you are to like, oh, I need to work on this a bit more, or I need to work on this part of my game, I need to work on this thing so that like those natural abilities, this will only further help my natural abilities. Like for me, it was like, go an hour without swearing. Can I do that? Because even as like being a speaker or podcaster or lecturer or any of that kind of thing, talking, kind of just eventually comes natural to us. But there was a point where we had to learn that. And with podcasting and doing that kind of thing, especially like the solo vibes, it still took me a lot of practice. It still took me, like, that's been the last 4, 5, 6 years of my life, is unlocking that natural ability, but also working on it so that it now is a natural ability where I can sit down, click the red circle, and just start talking. Where I have a little bit of a guideline to follow, but I can just turn it on and kind of just let go and let it happen and see if any kind of magic comes from it. It doing that work, putting in the reps and all that, allowed me to like have that possibility that maybe when it feels right and I sit down and push that red circle, the record, that I can make some sort of magic happen, that I can get some sort of sparkle out of it. And that's just me using as an example so that you can envision in your head what that is for you and what that looks like for you. And I think that's even kind of why I faded away with contemporary problems for the last little bit, was I just know how much better I am in this energy, how much more comfortable I am in this energy, how much more this energy feels aligned and right with me, that I may as well wait out these nodes till they change, so that I can then benefit more from it, instead of having to force through and try and go out and get it and ram heads with everybody and fight through it. I'd rather flow with it. Because that's just like, that's in me, that's in my cosmic fingerprint to go with the flow and not really ever force anything. Yeah, sure, that might come as a demise at times in my life, but at the same time, that's just where I find I have the most success and where I'm most comfortable operating in a space from. It's like in sports, it's like let the game come to you. And there's two sides to that. It's like you go be aggressive, you go out and get it. Screw any of that spiritual woo woo, go out and get it. That's not how I do it. I let the game come to me. And even then, there's still times when you do have to force through or be aggressive as well. And I think about that in sports where it's like, yeah, I'm so just going with the flow, let it come to me, let the magic do its work. Believe in it and it happens. But sometimes letting the game come to me might still mean, okay, at this exact juncture in the game, I got to go get in the corners. I got to go get pucks deep. I got to go in there and be the aggressor. Because even my Mars is also in Pisces. And Mars is like how you fight. Mars is how you play sports. So for me with that in Pisces, it is about the magic. And tapping into what my natural abilities are and really emphasizing on that. Just like the Allen Iverson quote, practice. We're talking about practice. I put the ball in the air and it goes in the hoop. And I think that's like, even if you're like teaching someone a jump shot or teaching someone how to play a certain sport, but basketball is a good example of that, where shooting your shot is about 50% confidence, 40% believing in yourself, which is also the confidence, but so then that could be 90% believing in yourself, believing that the ball is going to go in, and about 10% technique. Yeah, there's the physics and the fundamentals of it, but at the same time, you're going to be able to score that basketball if you believe in yourself. There's a test done where they had say a group of 10, two groups of 10 people, and they blindfolded one of the groups and said, meditate on making your shot, meditate on shooting the shot in for 10 minutes. They made the other group of people, okay, practice your shot for 10 minutes. And then after that 10 minutes, they lined everybody up to see who would make more shots. And they got people of similar ability. I think they even got people that don't play basketball kind of thing, but everyone was of like a very similar ability in that objective or sport. And the people that sat there and meditated scored higher than the people that practiced. Like, think about that. The people that envisioned that. The people that brought the dreams into reality did better than the people that were just in the reality. And that's the perfect example of the energies that we need to embrace for the next year and a half. And I think that is a perfect thing to say to end the show as the first ever episode of what I call The Vibe, where I hope to do the show about 4 times a month, give or take, more or less. I'm just going with the flow. I'm going with the vibe. And I'll focus on different aspects. I might even focus on things like, I'll do one about like Year of the Snake, Chinese astrology, things like that, and kind of put my own spin, my own twist on it, and share it to help bring my own reality into reality, but also to help those willing to listen understand what the vibe is, what the energy is. What do we got to do? What's the vibe? And even then, with going with the flow and all that, I didn't have a name. Like I said, how I wanted to record it and I had to wait. When I sat down and recorded today, it was like, oh, I'll call it the vibe. Oh, I'll get the song for it. Oh, I'll create some artwork for it. Boom, boom, boom. Came up with the name, all that. It would have been, had I done it 2 days earlier, I wouldn't have had that. I wouldn't have had the notes that I wanted to talk about. I wouldn't have had the thoughts fully through that I wanted to talk about. And even then, when I hit record, it was still like, it's still kind of like there is a spontaneity that I always like to bring to what I do. It's just part of my creative process. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something today. I hope that this will help you over the next year and a half. And I hope that I can continue to help y'all. I've got links in the description. You can also just go Linktree/contemporary problems _ for everything contemporary problems and everything that I do. And feel free to show your support in any way, whether it's a like, a review, a donation. I got t-shirts. I do it all. There's many ways that can keep this going. Even just message me about it. Hey, thanks. Hey, if you have a question, you message me. I'll probably answer it. I'll probably talk your ear off about it. This is what I do. This is what I'm here to do and help y'all. So I hope y'all can vibe on that energy, find that glow, find that sparkle, and I'll catch you on the next one. My name is TJ Day. Welcome to the vibe.